What's going on, guys? Welcome back. Madam Web arrives, and with her, the move meta as well. We've got a new colossal card coming to the game, my favorite of the month. And today, we're going to break down all of her obvious move synergy, and we have a move tier list for you today. But on top of that, we're going to talk about the outside of the box, the cards that are going to combo with her, or what she brings to the table that truly makes her one of the best cards potentially to come to the game. On top of that, we're going to talk about cards that are hot and on the rise, from Shadow King to Red Guardian. We have cards that counter activate or help you with activate. You should be putting these in your decks right away. And Alex and I are going to break down our list, and we're going to talk about that all today, more on this episode of the Snapchat. And as always, I am joined by the one and only Mr. Alex Coccia. Hello, my friend. We had our crazy week of activate. We have another one coming this week and a lot to talk about. How are we holding up? How are we doing?
Oh, buddy, I'm doing great, and you're right. Like, it was a wild week in Marvel Snap. We had Activate, 2 new cards coming out. Both of them are remarkable in their own ways. I was traveling. We recorded last week's episode very early in comparison to what we usually do, which was probably like one of the absolute hardest weeks to do it, because like we actually didn't have like all the information. We didn't have the OTA. Shout out to Regis, by the way, that absolutely crushed it. It was really cool hearing Regis on the pod, and dude, I can't even begin to tell you, like, last week was legitimately insane. I don't even know where to start.
I remember, like, a long time ago, you're like, hey, I need this week. We got to do early. We never really film early, almost ever. It's almost always the day before or maybe 2 days. But it was, like, maybe a month back. We're like, yeah, not a problem. And then, like, a day before, I messaged him, like, oh, my God, it's Activate. We're screwed. Like, how are we going to... And luckily, most of it worked out. Some of it didn't. But we obviously will talk about a lot of that today. But, yeah, man... Activate week, crazy. Symbiote Spider-Man new season, wild. We had Silver Sable come out, chaotic. On this side of things, launched a brand new channel, Sleepless Nights, dying, NFL kickoff, college. It's been a good week, man. How was your week over there?
It was great. And I gotta say, Cozy TV looks incredible. I love the videos you've done. The Silver Sable and the Symbiote Spider-Man one, remarkable. I actually watched it with my kids as well, because you know, they're pretty family friendly. It's pretty cool. My kids love the Spider-Man, and they like the history of it, and they were like, Venomized Spider-Man, and they were going like crazy, right? And I don't know, man. I think those videos are so remarkably well produced, and you're doing it. I don't know. It was just so cool to see in a different capacity, but still in like a universe that you love. And so, I mean, it's awesome, man. I can't wait to see what comes out in the future.
Dude, you know, it was a passion project, and then I forgot how clinically insane I am. Like, I just get addicted to the process and doing it all, and so now I'm like, I want to do more. I want to do every character, and I'm it's a lot, but it's so well worth it. A lot of fun. I think it's super. It's just, I find it just extremely satisfying to starting a new channel and going through all that and some of the building blocks, and mainly doing something I don't know, right? Like, I love just doing things that I don't know. Like the way that the video works out is entirely different. So I appreciate that, man. Exciting stuff to come on that, and I get to do it every week. So that'll be a good time. And you were in PAX. How was PAX, man? How was everything there?
Oh man, PAX was absolutely wild. Like, I love the Penny Arcade Expo because, like, for me, it's foundational to the reason why I play card games. I learned to play card games at PAX East 2010, sitting on the floor. Like, you know, at that time we would get like get goodie bags, and I got like a little Magic starter deck. It's where I learned to play cards, learned to play Magic right there. And this particular PAX was cool. I got to meet Ken Eric, which was fantastic, from the Marvel Snap team, and someone else. So basically, I was there at the event, and I was playing cards at an Altered Table, which is basically a new card game that's coming out. And I was just there for funsies. And a lot of people were coming up and saying like, hey, Alex, huge fan of the Snapchat and stuff like that. I was like, hey, cool, you know, giving them fist bumps while I'm like actively playing. And there was a lineup of people waiting to play against me. And, you know, I'm sitting there, I'm playing, I feel a tap on my shoulder. And I turn and I say, hey, man, what's up? How are you? He's like, hey, Alex. And I'm like, hey, what's your name? And I'm just playing. He's like, oh, Glenn. I'm like, cool, Glenn, nice to meet you. You play Marvel Snap? He's like, yeah. And I kind of look at him, he looks at me, and I realize he's wearing a second dinner hat. I'm like, oh my God, it's Glenn Jones. And I say, hold on a second. I stand up, I shake his hand for a second. I hadn't recognized, I never met him before.
Classic.
But I had like this amazing conversation with Glenn. I was like apologizing profusely for like actually not recognizing him and all that stuff. But anyways, he was so cool. And I got to talk to him about like Marvel Snap and stuff, and like how, like, you know, he's designing cards, balancing cards. It was so awesome to just have this one-on-one, like off the cuff conversation with someone who honestly I really respect. I truly respect the work that Glenn does, because we couldn't do that. We can't even evaluate the cards coming out accurately, let alone making them and designing them. So it was an awesome experience. I don't know, I'm just remarkably impressed with the work he does. So getting to meet him in person was phenomenal.
And I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Seeing people in 3D space, it can be weird when you don't see them that way. Like, they're sometimes, like, not unrecognizable, but kind of. Like, I know that was the way I felt with Ben Brode, but also I just had Tribe come up, and they're doing this, like, day in the life of Cozy, and they did Dexter as well. And they met me, and they walked, like, right past. They didn't even recognize. Like, they just walked right past. I'm like, you're here to film me, and they didn't even know it was me. And they're like, dude, it was weird seeing you in 3D space. So it is, like, just different seeing somebody from the same angle, and I don't blame you there. But did you tell him to buff Arrow for me? Yeah.
I did not. I said I think you guys
had one
should
job.
delete Arrow. To be
You had
honest,
one
with you.
job.
I know. I'm sorry, dude. But one thing really stood out. If I can take another second to talk about the Penny Arcade Expo, one thing really stood out. I had a fan of the Snapchat, Brennan, come to me and, shook my hand, said, huge fan of the show. And he gave me something really special. I want to share it with you guys because, like, I actually got, like, choked up because this is, like, a family memento that he had. His father was a collector of cards. I'm actually getting, like, emotional talking about it. All the original Jim Lee collectible cards of the X-Men. I want to try and get the light out of there. All the original from the 1990s, the complete set of the Jim Lee collectible trading cards. He gave this to me. It was his father's. And a lot of these are from in the game. They're in the game. They're in Marvel Snap, including like one of my absolute favorite Jim Lee Mystiques. These are all,
so
it's incredible. Yeah, these are the originals, the original trading cards for the X-Men. And I mean, showing it on the camera right now doesn't do this justice. The whole kit's here, the whole set's here, and like even this, the Colossus, you'll recognize a lot of this art from the game. And these are from the early 1990s. I believe these are from 1991, 92, and 93. So like I don't know. I just really appreciated it, and it kind of made me realize like, Cozy, we're so lucky to do what we do. Yeah. And it's like, that was the moment where I'm like, you know what? It's like, man, what we do is so special. You know what I mean? It's just like, despite the stress, despite the amount of hard work, the amazing people that support us, it's incredible.
Dude, first of all, what a guy, man. I love Mr. Alex Coccia here. What a guy. And that is up there as one of the coolest things that I've ever seen given, man. Like, put that behind the shelf. You know what would be cool is if you put those in like a you have to look it up. People have done this in the past with like Pokemon, like the OG cards, where it's like a mural, but like and all the cards are like kind of through glass or whatever, and you can have it as like a portrait behind you or something rather than just in a wall, and that way you have it like, on display, man. But that's so cool, man. And you're right. We're beyond lucky. We're hitting 2 years of episodes now, guys. Never missing a Monday. Mondays suck most of the time for a lot of you guys, and that's why we pick Mondays to release this. It's been a journey, high and low. And a Snap keeps going. We're blessed to keep doing this show. And I can speak for both of us. We'll be doing it beyond Snap. I can tell you that. So love you, man, over there. What a guy. What a guy. All right, bud. Well, we're going to be talking about a huge week. We had Activate hit, and now we've got Madam Web coming out, who is my favorite card by far this month. Massive card coming to the game with the spotlight. You guys know what we're talking about over here. A little bit of tier list action, a little bit of cards on the rise, and the ones that you should be playing right now. But Alex, what are we talking about on your side?
Cozy, on my side of the Snapchat, we're going to be discussing Symbiote, Spider-Man, and Silver Sable in review. We've got 2 cards to talk about. We'll be discussing both. We'll also be talking about Marvel Snap's most busted combos. And then finally, as always, our Snapchat mailbag.
Well, the time has come where either I'm going to look like a complete idiot or we have entered a brand new era into Marvel Snap. You've seen thumbnails before. Is it the Destroy era? Is it the Toxic? No, it is the Move meta. The Move era has come. Those that have been waiting 2 years, this might be the card that gets everything going. And we're not even done just here because next week we have another one coming. Madam Web hits the spotlights this week. It is a 2-cost, 1 power card with the ongoing ability. You can move one of your other cards away from here each turn. And we've seen the video. We've seen it. It's pretty much just like the old Space Stone. You can move any card to any location that you want to. We've got ourselves a banger, man, and we've got a lot to break down. Obviously, move synergies are going to be obvious. We'll go card by card there, especially when we get to the move card tier list. We also got a lot of thinking outside the box, as I like to call it, and a lot of synergies we'll break down there. Alex, you already know this is my 5-star card. I need to not say much more until the synergy. Where are we at now?
You know what? It's been a weird week because, like, I felt like the entire world was telling me, like, hey, Alex, you're totally wrong on Madam Web. Like, to rank her, like, potentially at the bottom of this month is kind of crazy. And, like, I totally understand that. And It's one of those things where like when the zeitgeist around you is suggesting that you're wrong and like that people are higher, it kind of drifts you up a little bit. But in some ways, I kind of want to plant my heels a little bit because I do have some reservations about this card. Obviously, I see the potential here. I can see what it can do to Move as a whole, especially when you think about the tools that Move has and how incredibly well statted those cards can be. Like, I don't know. I'm leaning towards like, I'm optimistic 4 stars because I do think this is a good card, potentially even outside of Move. But at the same time, I have a number of reservations where it would not surprise me if this card kind of landed on its face and felt more like a 3. And I'll be more than happy to be wrong because I know that a lot of people are going to get this card and I want them to be happy with their purchase and their resources. But I think that it's not as clear-cut a winner as it might look at first glance. And if I'm wrong, then so be it. But like, I do think there are challenges here. But you're right to say that this card could potentially be one of the most cracked Move cards to ever have been printed.
Well, first of all, good, because it's be a boring conversation if you didn't see it that way, in my opinion, right? Like, I'm here to hype it up because I love it that much, and if you were too, it'd just be 2 guys like, oh my god, Madam Web, can't wait. Whereas it's great to now have a little bit of a sounding board to go up against my chaotic rambling of how much I love this card. And I can respect that in some veins, and I think one of the most obvious things that I can say is Clog right now, we're going to be talking about cards on the rise, Galactus is in there. Clog right now is heavily played. Mainly to counter Symbiote Spider-Man, to counter the Galactus out there. And so that will have an impact on Madam in this current state a little bit. But yeah, I'm conducting. I've strapped up, put the conductor hat on. I've got the train, the hype train for Madam Web underway here. And I want to start, before we go into synergies, the reason, and I guess I want to just pump the brakes for 1 second. I'm sorry. You gave someone like Fastos, I think, a 3-star before. You're saying like somewhere in that range, maybe another card, maybe not Fastos. What's another like 3-star card you compare it to then?
Oh man, I'd have to go back and think about it. I'm not exactly sure, like in terms of power level, like in terms of like viability.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's definitely better than Fastos. That's clear.
I would hope so,
like that's obvious. But it's gonna have like this. Like I would say it's very similar to Marvel Boy, except I think Zoo's better.
Oh,
like I don't know how to explain it. Like
yeah.
The reason why I say this is because Marvel Boy is like you will not build a Zoo deck without Marvel Boy now, and I don't know if you build a Move deck without Madam Web.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I think that it's like a cemented part of the archetype.
Definitely.
But I don't think that. I think that like Marvel Boy is better than this. Like I actually do from a stats perspective and what it can do. And again, I could be wrong, but like. I just think there are challenges that Madam Web has to overcome to truly be a top tier card. Like I think it's more than just like, yeah, Dagger's gonna go absolutely insane. We know we're gonna see like Cozy, your video is gonna have a dagger that's gonna be like 180 power or something crazy, right? Like we know that's gonna happen, but I do think there's challenges still.
So I think the first thing that's really cool about her is this is always the process episode where we talk about our hopes and dreams for the card or where we think it's gonna land. And we always have new card videos, each of us on our respective channels, where we give it our final ranking. This is not going to be a card like even Symbiote, where it's like, I don't know, is it good? I think we're going to know pretty quickly, like, okay, this is how she's functioning. Now, there'll be a large impact of games needed to be played to see some of the other stuff here. But as far as just the pure move synergy, that's going to be very obvious up front. You know, be on the lookout for that. I want to start, before we talk about the synergies, let me talk about what I really like about it. First of all, I do think in a move capacity, this is not a little boost. This is a major boost, Alex. I mean, this is giving you agency to move without playing a card every single turn. That is so massive. I can't even... It's so exponentially better than anything that we have out there for the archetype. It's hard to even compare it to anything that we have right now and what it's going to do for that archetype, right? So that's going to be her best home. We're going to dive all into that. The things I want to talk about, though, is all the outside of the box and or the plug-and-play ability of this card, which is yet to be seen, and that's where I want to see it. As a move card, she's great in her own right, okay? Period. We're going to know that. But as a synergistic plug-and-play card, where I see the massive potential is the control element behind her. So first of all, obviously getting into closed-down locations, we love. Okay, we've talked about that. Getting into, you can play her with control builds. But for me, it's all about the brain games, and it's going to be very hard to start predicting your opponent. I'm going to talk about outside the box synergies, Alex, but something as simple. So let's keep it super simple. You play Black Panther in her lane. Your opponent has no clue where you will move that Black Panther and where you're going to put Arnim Zola on that Black Panther. No clue. And at that point, you just have this strong agency against your opponent. You're not going to play with Dracula. Another great example. Throw Dracula. That's a lane winning card. That's a lane winning card. So to me, that agency and the ability to be able to change where you're going and change up some game plans, I think is so massive of a strategy and just for a card in general under her staying power.
Actually love that we're starting outside of move for a sec, because I think a lot of people are going to go right to move right away. I love what you've done here, because that is probably an underappreciated part of Madam Web, which kind of gives me some excitement for the card. Because what you can do is, like, let's say you play a one drop, it doesn't matter what it is. You can play, Iceman, right? So at turn 2 you play Madam Web. Turn 3 you play Hope Summers. Turn 4, now if you have Hope Summers and you're playing these all in the same lane, you might be thinking to yourself, well, you gotta have something with move there. It's a Jeff, you play a Nocturne or something. No, play Call Obsidian. That's a 10 power card. And you know what? Shang-Chi's going to have a hard time hitting him because you get to move Call Obsidian. But you could start by moving the Iceman. And then you have this 10 power card, and maybe they try to Shang it, you move the Call Obsidian. You don't even need the mobile cards. You don't need the visions. You don't need... So, like, I think that this outside the box thinking is actually great, because you can start using some overstated cards that traditionally would have had to have been move cards.
It's
you know what I
anti-tech.
mean? And suddenly, it's hard to hit, like, the Shangers and stuff like that, because things are moving.
So it's anti-tech, right? So you've got that, like, it's going to be this cool dance. It's turn 4. You're like, do they have a Shang-Chi in their deck, right? Do they have a Shang-Chi? Does he expect me to move my 10 power here, or maybe turn 5, right? Do they expect me to move it? Do I stay here because of that? Do I need to change? We see this. You play down Madam Web, you play down a good 3 cost, and then maybe the Nexus appears, or maybe Nexus appears through, you can move cards to that location at that point. It's not, so we're going to talk more about the move towards the back end when we get to the move card tier list, because I think that's where a lot of these fun conversations get to have. But right then and there, I think Artem Zola, funny enough, of all cards, his stocks go way up. His stocks already went up with Symbiote, but you've got this card now that was so hard to make sure you have one card in one lane, and Clog is still a thing, I get that, but you're going to now be able to have a lot more agency behind that. But even something as simple as Wong, how many times you play a Wong down, and it's super awkward, right? Because you're like, okay, here comes the Enchantress, here comes the Cosmo. Hey, how about something like turn 6, you have your Wong in your Madam Web lane, you move that, you play Doctor Doom. Done, right? You're able to move the Wong and activate an on reveal to ensure that you can get that pop off. This has never been able to happen before.
Yeah, it reminds me of like Wong games when you have like New York, and it's very hard for your opponent to predict where that Wong's going to ultimately be. And I even had like a thought, like, listen, Marvel Snap is such a dynamic game with locations. What about a game when like you get like, I think it's called Klein, I'm not sure, the one that closes after turn 4, right? There could be situations where that's closing and you have like a monster island, and you could literally not play into it, and you can take the monster and throw it into that location that's closed.
Yep.
And your opponent can't do that. Now it's not, they can't even Shang-Chi it. And it's like, well, what do you do now? And Madam Web gives you the access to like the Sanctorums and other things. It's pretty fascinating what you can do outside of move altogether, just being able to reposition your cards.
Which is why she needs to be the cost and the power that she is. She can't be a good on-curve play because of what she gives you. We all know if there's a low power to a card, it has to have some real heavy lifting and heavy punching up of what it does. And I think that the agency this gives you and the unpredictableness, on top of all the move stuff, is enough, right? Is enough to do the crazy chaos that I think she'll be able to do. I mean, even something so crazy as forever now, let's go back to Artem Zola. Shuri, Red Skull, all right? Shuri, Mockingbird, whatever you want to do. You couldn't Artem Zola that. You crazy? Because why not? Well, you got Shuri in the lane. That's too risky, right? Well, now you can easily just move the Red Skull out. You just double that power. Just easily get that job done, right? So I think there's going to be combos outside of that we'll talk about today that you've got that. You're able to move whenever you want. It is a turn 2 play, so you have 3, 4, 5, and 6 to be able to get that job done after that. But between location, bad luck, between locations that are annoying like Vibranium Mines, ones you can use to your advantage, right? Like a Shuri's Lab, that then you can take those doubled up ones and then move them, or go into destroy locations, or get plus power from the move locations. They've designed cards like Scream, as I think, anti to counter this card. To me, the writing's on the wall. This thing's going to be a banger, and I'm excited to keep talking synergies here.
But before we move to synergy, I want to talk about one thing just very, very fast about Madam Web. And I have this like kind of like tin hat theory that the power from 2 to 3 to 2 to 1 is less about Madam Web's power and more about the development team's desire to make it more targetable by Red Guardian. I had this thought. I'm like,
Yeah.
if it's a 2-1, it's a much more consistent hit for Red Guardian, which is an on-curve counter if this card goes absolutely crazy. And I wonder if it's less about that 2 power, which obviously is part of it too, but more about a very clean strike for Red Guardian.
Yeah, I could imagine that because, we can talk counters in a sec. I got a lot written down for counters because there's plenty of ways to deal with this. But yeah, I mean, that is a fair point. I mean, you gain Ravonna synergy with that and negative synergy. Cards we've just been talking about, like Black Panther, Arnhem, all those, even Shuri, are negative cards or are Ravonna cards. And so I think that's also very interesting, like to see maybe that's going to be the deck to end up playing here. But that's a great point. Red Guardian is a card I've just played a ton of to get up to Infinite. And man, that he's filthy. He's going to be an absolute easy shutdown for this card. But it does use their turn 3, right? It does use some of that. And you got rid of their 2 for your turn 3. Okay. So at that point, a lot of their deck will be probably designed a little bit around this. But yeah, that is a good point and an interesting bring up there. To me, some of the stuff I thought about, it's like, I don't even know if you'll use in practice, but I like the idea of even like, let's call it a destroy deck, right? Like, you're not going to play this with destroy, obviously, but it's cool to think about, okay, like if an X-23 or Wolverine land in here, you can always put them with the other X-23 or the other Wolverine. Like, there's just very unique stuff. I brought up Dracula earlier. You're not going to do that probably either, but hey, you can play Drac in this and then put that at the last turn of the game in a lane that you're like, all right, let's win. They have no idea at that point. But to kind of bring it back in, because trust me, guys, we'll talk move. We're going to get all about move here. But to bring it back in for out of the box, for me, we did talk about, I think, the Angela, the Hope Summers, after Angela's kind of massive nerf. We'll see kind of if that ends up being played. I think Hope Summers is actually probably just better. You get the curve play. Being able to play in there and not have to sacrifice having everything in that one lane is pretty strong. Do you think, though, Alex, I brought it up last week, do you think that control with Goose is going to be a thing or whatever? Storm? I would plug this card into the decks that I highlighted this week.
Well, especially when you consider that something like a Professor X invites this card, right? So when you're talking about control, you got to talk about Pro X. What does Pro X allow?
Yep.
Movement, right? What does Goose allow? Movement,
yep.
Right? You can't play on top of them. Imagine having a Goose and a Pro X, and then your opponent's like, "What? Like, where do you want me to play?"
Yep.
And then maybe a week open, you put some Negasonic in there too, right? They're only going to be playing in one spot. Kaboom!
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy the way Professor X is. And I actually had this thought as well. Like, I don't know if Professor X stays this way, because if Madam Web does take over the meta as could be potentially expected, then Professor X has to kind of lock down the movement again.
Yeah.
Because it needs to be a release valve. Because if move's going crazy, there's very few cards that can actually really stop it. Yeah, we're getting Scream. You can play some Kingpin if you really want to cope a little bit. But like Professor X has been traditionally an Achilles heel for move. It's an Achilles heel for everything, right? That's kind of the reason why it had to get taken behind the shed. So like, I don't know, man. I think that control could be legit. And yeah, it could be. We're going to talk about move. We know that, where the numbers get really big. But there's like this safety behind control that might make it Madam Web's like cleanest, highest cube rate spot, which I think could surprise people.
And that's where I think I'll play her a ton, and it sticks because I just spent everyone was going Black Panther, and I did too, day one. But I focused on a Doom lockdown deck with my Symbiote because to me, the idea of shutting down with Storm, right? You counter a lot of stuff there. But to not even give a rip what's in that Storm lane, right? Like you storm off and then you worry about your own stuff. And then we have all these cards that are designed now, like Negasonic and Alliance, to take care of that one other lane that you need to win. So, like, to me, that just seems like the easiest way also to deal against her, right? Someone plays a Madam Web on you, play a Storm on that lane. Like, what they just lost, that potential there, which Storm has always been historically good against move decks. But I do think control is great with some on-reveal stuff. We just mentioned Dr. Doom with Wong. You could, do something like that. I've seen some people bring up Lockjaw because that was the old days of the the Thanos and the Space Stone. It's going to be very interesting to see how he works here because you get to play Madam Web, right? In theory, if you get the card draw right, you get to play Madam Web, you put Lockjaw on there, and then you just play Jubilees, you play whatever you want to. That blinks. I mean, that Lockjaw is probably going to get a new identity as a deck in a way that I'm excited to see, and I'm curious if that means Thanos or whatever in that regard.
I like it, but at the same time, it's so painful to see Lockjaw at 4.
Yeah.
Because if you can imagine Madam Web 2, Lockjaw 3, Jubilee 4, then like that, like you're right. Like that is such a god hand, right? And maybe that's the reason why like Lockjaw had to kind of get kind of put in the cage a little bit because like it was absolutely crazy for that reason. But like any deck that really, really wants that movement that generally like, okay, we need to get the cards in the right spot. And I think that Lockjaw is a prime example of that. And you brought up the Space Stone, and that was what made the Space Stone so good, because you play into the Lockjaw, then you get things out of there and keep playing into Lockjaw. And it's like, okay, they played into Lockjaw 6 times this game. That's sweet. You know what I mean? So and Madam Web definitely has the potential to do exactly that.
I mean, looking outside of just the Lockjaw route, right, you've got things like Elsa that I think is going to be interesting. Like, we will definitely get the players that are going to go that kind of Kitty Pryde, Elsa, Hope Summers deck, and I think there's some interesting things you can build there. The way you finish off and the way you're able to move around your key pieces, and we're not talking about move yet, that's what's so crazy about this, is what's really going to kind of highlight and shine this deck. And I still stand behind greedy cards like Wong. That's what I'm excited for. I'm excited for these cards that otherwise were just strict, easy counters, get them over with. Now you have a lot more kind of unpredictability with it. With that, dude, let's talk about it. Let's talk about move, because that's clearly what this is going to be. We'll talk about some of the move cards, and we'll jump into the tier list here that will take, no time at all. Listen, this is, we just talked about all this great stuff with the unpredictability of Madam Web and whatnot. But when you're talking move at this point, you now have this ultimate card to power up, and this game was balanced. But without this card, the dagger, that vulture, these were balanced before Madam Web. I'm shocked that they didn't get hit in the OTA, I'll be honest. I get why Taskmaster did now, but you look at something like Dagger, Alex, and you're right. We opened up talking about her for a reason. I mean, a +3 that you can move all the time with Hercules on the board. What are we going to do?
I think Dagger is probably by far the best move card. I've been playing a ton of like move lately. So we're in the same guild, and I made it a public service to do all those move quests. I was doing it nonstop, streaming, doing move quests, and I wanted to like prepare for this season, right? Dagger was insane, like 30 power daggers, like not even. I wasn't even trying that hard. You were just hitting stuff, like constantly hitting stuff and moving it around, and it was so high powered, and it made me wonder, like, hold on, we got a dagger at 30. I can get Human Torch to 64. I can get, you can get Vulture into the 20s. But why doesn't everyone play move? Like, why is it that move doesn't take over with a card that's a 230, right? Because of the space, because of everything else that comes with it, right? Dagger, it's hard to Shadow King a dagger because of the movement side of it, but everything usually goes left with Heimdall. But now you have Madam Web sending things right. Now you have a Hercules play on curve that might be able to do something and make this even bounce around even more. But my question to you, Cozy, is does move need more power? Or does it need more answers to things like Clog and stuff?
Yeah, man. I mean, good question. That's where I want to dial it from Dagger and say Hercules is where I'm a little bit mixed up on, because Hercules takes away some of your dependable movement, right? Like, if I play into Madam and I move Dagger over to where I know I need to get her, like, yes, I could get more power on her if Hercules kicks her over, maybe back to my Madam Web or whatever, right? But do I need all that for the randomness and using up a 3-turn? You know what I mean? That's where I don't know. Herc, I think, is a fun idea in the like crazy power department, but we'll have to see. I think, if anything, Madam solves a lot of these problems, especially like, let's say Debris. People are saying Debris is a good counter to Madam. Sure, it adds a card. Great for Dagger. Great for, these move cards that can scale up kind of quickly here. I ultimately think, first of all, people are playing move now. I mean, the move bounce deck is... Tiny move balance right now is one of the best decks. I mean, it is a very hard deck to deal with, especially if you know what you're doing. I do think that could take over as one of the best, if not the best deck in the game. I really do. I think that that's something that is highly plausible. But it's when you start combining these cards, and you've got Dagger, you have Vulture, and you're able just to do a pre-setup like Iron Fist into the Dagger, into the Madam Web lane. Then you move her over the next turn because maybe you whiffed where they played the next card, and then you build her up again. Maybe you bounce that back. Maybe this isn't a bounce package. Maybe it's not. Maybe it doesn't have to be because you have Doctor Strange. There's going to be so much going on, and this adds what I think Move needed the most, and that was more agency and more movement, to be honest.
It kind of reminds me of like what happened to Discard, where it started getting more targeted, right? You had Blade, which was random, and that obviously becoming targeted helped a lot. So you're suggesting like, okay, so Hercules generates more power, and it happens to be on curve, 2 Madam Web, Hercules on 3, and then you'd have to play something eventually to move, probably Human Torch on 1, for example. But what's interesting about this is, like you're saying, would you suggest that, like, in a deck like this, that maybe even something like a Cloak, which is technically reliable move, might be more reliable than something like a Hercules?
Yeah, yes and no. It's going to be interesting to see what move enablers make the final deck now with Madam Web being a thing, right? Because like Madam Web is doing that job so well. So we're going to have to see which ones kind of ultimately take that role. Keep in mind, guys, we go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs if it's like a 2-4, 2-5. If the opponent has 3 cards, this is a 2-9, right? Like, let's just remind everybody that the clear-cut basic. To me, the easiest way to wrap this up for most people is Atuma just came out. Atuma, absolutely bonkers, right? Atuma's been a fantastic card. Why? Because you don't have to spend energy for Atuma to do his role to destroy cards, correct? That's what Madam Web does. But she gives you even more agency. So like that's where Atuma's a 10 power card. Let's get that straight. But Madam Web's a 2 cost card. That's where I see the big difference.
Yeah, I think that one of the challenges too with Madam Web is that like you need a staging turn because it's an ongoing, so it has to be present on the field of play. Whereas like Iron Fist, for instance, because it's an on reveal, the card will immediately move, right? So like there's still challenges. Like I think it's gonna take some time to like set up the board state in a way that Madam Web's gonna be at its greatest effectiveness. And then once it is though, like you could very well see on turn 6, you move something, you have Madam Web on the left, you move a Vulture to the right, and then you Heimdall where you need, and the Vulture's going to kick over, everything else kicks over, but you have the Heimdall exactly where you want, and you have the Vulture exactly where you want. And it's because you're able to reposition, because the movements will reveal before the actual cards are played, if it plays like we expect it to. I mean, I say that, but then again, Symbiote Spider-Man completely changed the play order, so it's like, wait. They can obviously make it so that like you can manipulate play order a little bit. We're not sure if Madam Web does that yet because we have to get our hands on it before we can know for sure. I would suspect it's just like moving Jeff, right? Jeff will resolve first as the move, and then the cards come into play. That's what I would assume. I don't know if who knows, right? But if that's the way it works, I think that she provides a lot of agency with those Heimdall plays because you're able to say, okay, Dagger's going to go here. I want her to end up here. Heimdall's going to stay left for additional power. Be able to do interesting things with Heimdall because you're able to reposition right with absolute effectiveness.
One thing that I'm going to try my hardest to not to freak out about is like, if we do see, you said a staging turn and it kind of reminded me of this. It's like if I get Rogued a ton or Enchantress a ton or the counters, right? We talked about it briefly. Red Guardian, Enchantress, Clog decks in general can be pretty good. And then things like Rogue. I'm not going to worry too much because that's just a day one new card counter. Like, you know, like if ongoing is the way they're answering this or ongoing shutdown cards, I'm not worried about it. It's been proven those cards do not really make it in these meta decks. I mean, maybe Madam Web changes that, right? I think Scream's going to be a big one. Before we go through all these, we have 4 or 5 more move cards. Let's just look at the tier list, right? And rank them quickly as we talk about their effectiveness with Madam. So this is in regards to Madam Web, but also not. Like, this is just move cards in general. We already talked about Dagger, so let's go ahead and rank her right away. I think Dagger's clear-cut, top of the leaderboard.
Yeah.
Don't even have to think about it, right? Right up there with her. Does Vulture make S tier? I mean, a 3-9 with 1 movement? I would think so.
It should be, but I think in practicality, like it's probably closer to an A. Like really, he plays like an A. Stats-wise, he's an S. I agree, but like realistically, anybody that plays move is like Vulture's not S, right? But he should be.
For me, because here's the deal, right? Like obviously we got the big 3, right? Here's the big 3 with Killmonger being so prevalent, and or just Destroy being there. That the hesitancy here gets me a little bit worried. Like who knows? Maybe freaking Kyera makes its way in move decks now because you're able to just scale, some stupid thing. But out of these 3, it's tough because we see way more Human Torch because of bounce. We see that because of Phoenix Force. I feel like Vulture. By the way, Phoenix Force is incredible because you could throw human. We know not just a Phoenix Force deck, but I love the idea as a Phoenix Force in the deck because you build this Human Torch, they get rid of it. You're like, hey, thank you. It's tough to not have all 3 of these up here as the best, but I guess we could continue to rank. Would you have Human Torch in S or A?
I would put Vulture and Human Torch in A.
Okay. I'm going to keep them here for now. Not saying that we're not going to move them down. Let's see some of these other ranking cards. Then we'll get there. Keep in mind, this is with Madam Web. We got to use our thinking hats. Spider-Man 2099, does he make a huge comeback? Is he now... I think the problem with him is he's still in a bad meta, right? Because we have these decks that play so many cards at once that without targetability on this card, I think it's still poo-poo.
You know what though? At the same time though, it's like Madam Web gives him a little bit of targetability. Like he obviously doesn't target a card, but he targets a location much more consistently now.
For free.
Before it felt like a bit of a crapshoot, right? So now you can be like, hey, you're going over here. You know what I mean? And you maybe you high roll. I don't know.
It used to only be a Heimdall setup, whereas now I guess you can say where you're going to destroy it or whatever. So yeah, I do think he's better. I think conservatively we could put him in B to see where he might end up over time. Doctor Strange, he went down to a 2, and I think, I think that did a lot for him as a card. We talked about we might as well throw up, because we'll go with all these, right? We might as well throw up some of the move enablers. So we have, Doctor Strange, you have Cloak, we have Ghost Spider, we have Iron Fist, and then we have Heimdall. So these are the main guys outside of Madam Web, right? We'll start with Doctor Strange. Where do we put him?
I would lean towards C.
Okay. Just because it's only the highest cost card kind of thing, and you gotta work around
how many
that?
2-drops are you gonna put in your deck? Like, something's got to go eventually, right? Like Doctor Strange, Dagger, Madam Web. Like Madam Web takes Doctor Strange's spot.
Yeah, and because it's always so, they all do this in a sense. Outside of maybe there's ways with Iron Fist, but like Doctor Strange, you would have to play like on the Madam Web lane, then you could then take that dagger and move it again. So because it's only one per turn, it's still a little awkward. I might give him a B, but I could see the C. We could keep him here for now. Cloak.
I mean, he's pretty well statted, but he's probably in the Doctor Strange C range, honestly. That's what I would say.
Cloak, the awkward thing about Cloak is you're never playing him on 2 because you want to set him up. And then now it's like, well, with Madam Web, it's just interesting. I think one cool thing you could do with Cloak is you could move the Madam Web over to whatever lane some of these other cards are in, right? And then you just like leave some in the dust. I think that's interesting. Damn. Yeah. And to be fair, guys, by the way, I'm about to put in hours in a move. It is not something I play all the time. So it's tough to say definitively. I would say I'd play Doctor Strange over Cloak, though. Yeah.
I would too. And it's so weird looking at this. I want to just clarify here that this is with Madam Web in consideration. You're staring at a Spider-Man 2099 above Doctor Strange and Cloak right now. We are assuming that Spider-Man 2099 is going to be very synergistic with Madam Web because of the targeted move. So they were not talking about like right now prior to Madam Web's release. We are trying to anticipate the tier list with Madam Web as well.
Yes.
So just getting ahead of the comment section there,
And well, with that, though, we have... I just think move enablers might go down a tad, right? Just because of everything going on. By the way, if it looks like I'm sweating my face off, guys, it is
what is wrong with you?
It is a record day in California heat-wise, and San Diego, we don't have AC, and it's 90-something degrees. And I have a fan that I can't turn on if my audio got worse. That's why, people. Okay, moving on. Iron Fist. So I do think these cheap ones still maintain their value really well, right? Because you're still able, like the best thing about these is you're able to set these top 3 up with ease. Which these exist, why use these kind of thing? Are these still kind of firmly in the A-ish department, B-ish department?
I think Ghost Spider is an A card. Iron Fist is a B card. That's just me. And it kind of, again, this kind of illustrates the fast and the slow of move, right? Iron Fist to Ghost Spider, fast, right? On reveal. Madam Web requires that setup, slow, right? But much more targeted. And anybody that plays lots of Ghost Spider will know that Ghost Spider's occupation of a lane and a spot in a lane can be tricky because you're bringing a second card over. So if you already have 2 cards in a lane, you fill a location, right? So it's really worth considering like how that stuff plays out. But like I can definitely see something going down, Madam Web moving it, and then Ghost Spider coming down and bringing it back into the Madam Web location. Right? Yeah. And then moving it out again. So I think Ghost Spider's 100% A for sure. Iron Fist, I'm not as sold on.
That's what I have. I would have something like this probably. I think Ghost Spider's also just played more like Phoenix Force decks, whatever. You're going to see that more. Tiny movers, though, they're both really good. So it's hard to compare the two because they're both just easy cards. They're cheap cards. That's just the way that works, right? Heimdall, I still think Heimdall is a finisher. I do still think that the way you can set up... Now, I'll be interested to see if he makes it into the final decks, right? Is it going to be worth that one spot because you have all this agency? But some of the ways that I see Madam Web and the way that this would work, I still think he might be included in final move builds.
It's possible. The thing about Heimdall, though, is like... I think the threat of Heimdall is better than Heimdall himself. Yeah. Like, I feel like people being like, oh, they might be going left by one. You know what I mean? I think it's better. I find Heimdall to be kind of awkward to play. I don't know, man. I almost would rather just finish it like my turn 6 with like Ghost Spider and some other stuff, make Madam Web make a big move. I don't know. And that's probably why they had to nerf the Taskmaster, right? Like they probably had to nerf Taskmaster because it was probably a very available turn 6 play with these little mover decks.
And which is why I wonder if Doctor Strange goes up more, because like if you think about turn 6, right, you can't play Cloak, you can't play some of these other ones. Ghost Spider you can play, but by then you probably have Vulture, Dagger on the board. Doctor Strange lets you move something on the board that turn. So you know what I mean? So I'm a little curious about that, whereas Heimdall does the same. For a move tier list, B, A, what do you like?
Yeah, I wouldn't put him higher than B.
I think it's definitely, yeah. This is probably what it can end up being. Actually, probably this, yeah.
I was gonna say, I bet you Iron Fist is likely better overall right now than Heimdall.
These three are looking cemented in S now, by the way, with this with this new list, just because of how I don't know how they perform, but we can continue. Phoenix Force, man. Phoenix Force, we're gonna put it in the move category because that's just where it's played. God, I think Phoenix Force gamers, guys, rejoice. If you put the time in, you're gonna be just clapping. You're gonna be excited. I think this is a monument. I mean, Symbiote was already a really cool addition, and now you've got this.
During Twitch drops, I've been playing almost exclusively Phoenix Force. At first, I was like pretty rough with it. I'm starting to get the drift of it now. I'm getting pretty good. I got like the beautiful thing about Phoenix Force to anybody that really is not committed to it is when you look at the board state, suddenly it's almost like, do you know that what's that movie? It's a Hangover. When Zach Galifianakis, he's in the casino and he's counting cards and it's like all the numbers drifting over his head.
Yeah.
That's what you feel like when you play Phoenix Force. It cuts to a point where like you're looking at the board and you're like, wait a minute, I can Ghost Spider the Nimrod over here, and then I can Venom that, and then and then all of a sudden it's like this god tier play just appears to you, and you do it, and you win 8 cubes, and you're just like, it's special. Phoenix Force is special.
It's a perfect analogy, and I think because it makes its own deck and because of things you can do, and with Madam Web, I think it's right up here towards the top. That's what I would say, personally. It's funny because I think about some other cards, like Nico can move a card to the right, and she's played in like the Tiny Movers one because of that. I was thinking, like, it's super interesting. We didn't talk about this card, and his ability says move, so I want to bring it up with Madam Web. Does Grandmaster, here comes the goat, but does Grandmaster get better with Madam because you're able to move cards back into a lane out of the middle or whatever you might want to do there to replicate his effect?
Bro, this is such a deep cope. I don't even know what to say. I know this is a podcast where I'm supposed to say words, but like this is a deep cut. Buddy, you gotta continue talking. I need to think.
I didn't say S tier. I just better.
just a little bit better.
Does he go up a little bit?
I mean, maybe. I guess. I still think that Grandmaster is probably being slept on as a whole. I actually like him generally. I played him in some Silver Sable. He was not bad, man.
Yeah.
Because you could basically send Silver Sable on curve and then beast it, like literally on perfect curve. Sable, Grandmaster, beast. And it's just like sick, right? Like this is pretty good, right? Like it was not bad.
I think he has like a stereotype around him, but I think he is getting better definitely like with each and every day. And keep in mind, guys, Arrow, Cannonball, those cards aren't in here. Those are moving other cards. We're talking more about kind of move central cards as well. I don't think Miles is going to make the cut into decks. He's a 1/6. I just think because, I mean, I don't know. You can get him at any turn. That's kind of cool. Maybe you save him until turn 6. Where would you have Miles, though?
He's good. I think Miles is good, especially
like
with
that
A? Recent buff. I would consider him an A that probably does not get the play he deserves.
Yeah, I was going to say A is probably good for me. Multiple Man. We left him out of here. I don't know how. Yo, this card, I mean, talk about Madam Web potential, Symbiote Spider-Man potential, Phoenix Force. This is cracked.
It would surprise me if Multiple Man is not a key component of Madam Web. It's a key component of Phoenix Force because the additional power is added to the Multiple Man, and then you're bouncing with it like basically like you have Madam Web. Phoenix Force is Madam Web, right? Yeah. But in these decks, I wonder if you run out of space too fast because you have more things on the board, whereas Phoenix Force does have an open board. And you often prefer the Multiple Man over the Human Torch because of the Killmonger, right?
Yeah.
You can't Killmonger a Phoenix Force that's a Multiple Man, but you can a Human Torch, even though the number gets bigger faster. I don't know, man. Multiple Man is pretty good. I wonder if it's just too hard to set it up so like you Multiple Man, you Hulkbuster, because now the Hulkbuster nerf sucks a little more. And then you play Madam Web? Like what do those turns look like?
Yeah.
It would surprise me if you actually brought up Kyra. I don't think that's crazy. I don't think Human Torch into Madam Web into Kyra is actually that bad. Like honestly, because you'll get massive power that can't come off the board. Whereas I think you need extra steps for Multiple Man. Is he S? Maybe. He's definitely S in Phoenix Force.
Well, on Human Torch curves, right? And that's always the best part. Like you get to play that before the web there. Hercules is where the biggest question mark for me is because, guys, I get it. We've seen things like, can I just say this, by the way? We didn't talk about it. Who knows if it's worth it? But man, in a world, oh my God. You play down Madam Web. Maybe you draw Mystique. You get to copy that Madam Web, right? Okay? Madam Web, Mystique. You don't really need to, you don't need to do much to have that. Like that to me, you get so much ping pong combos going into 4, 5, and 6 That seems like you need perfect draw. That seems like damn near unstoppable. If you get the line.
That would be ideal if like they play Magic for you. Like you're against a Tribunal game
Yeah,
where they play
right.
Magic, and you're like, sweet. Like I get an extra turn for free, so I can set up my Mystique. That is a lot of like hopium being huffed, but like I'm all for it, man. If you want to make a ping pong deck cozy, buddy, you just might for all I know, man.
Call it ping pong. Yeah, I mean, but the fact is you'd have to get Madam Web, then you'd have to have Mystique play, and then you'd have to draw like the Vulture, the Human Torch, the Multiple Man, the Dagger. You'd probably put in Hercules just so you, just so it's just like it's literally ping pong all over the place. That could be a lot of fun, and I think it would work too in a sense. Like it's gonna allow you to do 2 different one-turn moves there. But again, we're gonna have to see. And outside of that, we have Craven. That's the only other one I'll probably talk about in this list here. You know, we have Jeff, we got these other ones, but this is we're talking more like, you know, classic. Craven's interesting, man. I think Craven's, I mean, as a 2, you move 1 card, you're good to go. With Madam Web now, you're looking at, you know, potentially some kind of craziness happening.
Dude, are you just gonna drift Hercules into A tier and not even say anything about it? I was gonna say, like, is this what's happening right now? You just throw him in A tier and move on? I'm like, what the hell?
Is he needed? Is he needed? Is what we'll have to find out.
No, man, he's definitely B. Like, even B is rough. Like, I could see him ending up being C.
I add him on there just in case. No, but Craven, where do you have Craven with Madam Web?
I would play Craven as a B. I don't see him making the decks. Like, I think Craven's okay. I mean, he was even being cut from like Silky Smooth decks eventually. Like, Craven has been getting cut, man. Like, he might be C. He might be under Doctor Strange. He might be between Doctor Strange Cloak. That's actually where I think he should be.
Yeah, it's like it's gonna be interesting. Really, so like right here, it's so funny because this would be here. Like, obviously, this would be here. But with Madam Web, we're looking at the potential. And I'm trying to think with Craven, it's like, are you playing Madam Web on him? Right, so you can move cards out of there, but then that doesn't make sense. But then you can keep on moving cards with that if it was in like the middle lane or something. But you're probably just being able to move cards, at least 3 cards onto him, and then you get like 2/6, 2/8 value. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think he makes it. I don't know if I'd put him in C though.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'll let you decide. Seeing Hercules and Craven and B is like making my blood boil, though.
All I know is this list is probably wrong, but this is kind of our 2 cents on it. I mean, I think all these cards are going to be really, really good. These 2 move enablers are going to make it past it all. We'll see where Miles kind of ends up, and then I think these 2 are on the bubble of making it. So yes, with all this, so yeah, this is our list, man, and we'll have to see where all these end up. Again, Hercules could end up being insane. I don't know if you need the extra power though.
Dude, you're missing a card. Cyclops.
Oh, well, I should just turn the S into him, yeah? Like make him a little like thing here. I think so. He's too powerful to make the list.
As we wrap up on Madam Web, I think there's one more we need to talk about, and that's Jean Grey. Jean Grey has always been on the cusp of being relevant, never being good, but being relevant. And now you have a curve play where you can on turn 2 Madam Web, turn 3 Jean Grey, and it becomes a question of like, do you want to fill your lane? Do you want to move stuff out? Like, well, how do you want to actually play that, right? Because sometimes your plan is fill up Jean Grey's location and then play outside of it, but you don't necessarily need to do that now. You can keep playing at Jean Grey location. You can move your lizard out, right? Not have to worry about it, and they can't do that, right? The other thing worth noting here is that Jean Grey and Madam Web are both ongoing cards. You have Spectrum synergy. So we have the opportunity to do some really cool stuff. And something like an agent, a US agent, for instance, let's say you see, they filled up the location and they put their larger cards in the right location. You can actually take your US agent and move it there. Right? You can target the US agent later in the game thanks to Madam Web.
Yep.
I really do think that Jean Grey and Madam Web might be a phenomenal synergy that might not be being talked about too much. And I plan to explore it on day 1.
Yeah, we had to save one of the best for last. I think there's definitely, as long as the deck is built around if you don't get Madam, it's just fine. And I think it is. Like, I think the way that it works, especially with Spectrum, to your point, we said even last week that I think Spectrum and Symbiote was a thing, and it's cool. It was cool to get double pop-offs on here and there games. There's just so much cool experimentation with Madam, with the weird stuff, right? I'm going to wait for Aranya, but I talked about moving the Brood and then being able to, like, use that Brood more often. Like, there's some interesting stuff even past this, and that's the other thing. Aranya is going to be another... So, like, we start here, we get to see where the bar is for move, and then we get to go up even higher with Aranya.
Yeah, it's no question. And, I mean, as you said, time will tell. There's going to be a lot of brewing with Madam Web.
let's go ahead and wrap up, guys. There is cards right now that are hot. They're on the rise, and they're obvious that you need to be putting into your decks because you're at a disadvantage if you don't. Because of where the meta's gone, we knew Activate would change some things. And Alex and I are going to talk about some hot and rising cards. Let's start with the clear cut, the ones we talk about plenty of the time. They're the tech cards of the game, right? If you have Red Guardian and you don't have this guy slotted in your deck, and I'm going to add in Shadow King. We talk about these two cards a lot. They've got to be there now. Shadow King is too good, and he counters too much, especially with Symbiote now, to not be in your deck, and Red Guardian being the same. These two are phenomenal tech cards that should be taking the place of where that Shang-Chi was months ago. I mean, it's that big and that impactful in the current meta.
Yeah, Red Guardian's legitimately phenomenal. This is a card that like I slowly fell in love with while playing, and I think that the change to Madame Web's power is going to allow you to very easily target her. And even if you don't play against the Madame Web gamer, like it takes out Ravonna, it takes out Jeffs, it takes out tons of things that are coming down early. Morbius, it takes out Nebulas. I mean, literally, there are a ton of scaling early cost cards. Athena, right? Like I could just keep going. That Red Guardian just cleanly takes out of the game. Cleanly takes out of the game. And I think that's a good thing because I think that a lot of those scaling early threats are cards that people are relying on.
Exactly. So Red Guardian, Shadow King, Rogue and Enchantress, obviously, to counter some of the stuff there with Madam. And then if you haven't been playing Snap, listen, Alex, I'm sure you saw your fair share. I mean, I brought it up. I just want to say I brought this up on the Snapchat, and I saw you commenters. I saw you. I don't think I didn't. I brought up Galactus and Symbiote. I said, I think this could be something super special, and I got laughed at. I even saw some posts like, can you believe they brought this up on other medias? Bro, this is nasty.
Dude, it was my favorite deck with Symbiote. Like, it was so fun. It was so fun. Almost my entire video was me playing Galactus because I had way too much fun, and I won games 100%, and it is so choreographed. You see Symbiote sitting there in a location by himself. You know G-Man's coming. Like, get out of here. But you know what? Maybe I don't play G-Man there. You know what I mean? Maybe I don't play G-Man there. Maybe it's going to be a Doctor Doom, and you just threw a bunch of energy there, and I just won the other two lanes, right? I really do like a Galactus with it, but man, I made a lot of people kneel this week.
My first hour of recording with Symbiote was Galactus, and then I looked back at my channel, and I was like, damn, I have 2 Galactus videos back to back. I can't do a third. Like, because I can't. I have to prevent myself. So I didn't do it. But I did play it a lot. The Namor splash on it too is so fun. You got the Symbiote down, you Namor the Symbiote, make it even stronger. Then you play the Galactus, and then all of a sudden you have this huge Galactus to play down. Really good. So obviously Galactus on the rise. Look out for Symbiotes in their own lane is what Alex and I's key message is into. Also, if you see that, look out for Black Panther. Black Panther did make a comeback, man. He definitely did. I mean, it was a massive increase. Still you could still telegraph it, but it works with some of these other cards, which is why it's being played universally.
Do you know how I know that Black Panther is legit doing well right now? That almost all the top performing decks are starting to slide Cosmo in. Like in terms of cube rate win rate, Cosmo's making a comeback because of that exact reason, right? Because Black Panther Zola, Black Panther, pretty much anything is just really good.
They are saving it probably for another card, but with Cosmo falling off so much, I still think he should block Activate too. I don't know. I just think that would give him more identity, if you will. But yeah, Cosmo definitely could shut down a lot of the greedy stuff that's happening right now. No question about it. Lastly, listen, Clog, Viper, Debris, Acid Arrow. Acid Arrow with Kate Bishop is an awesome way to simply either counter Symbiote and get a free, arrow to your side, or you can counter the Galactus play. And then lastly, Atuma brought in Nimrod and Shuri maximum. I mean, those Nimrod has had an explosion in popularity ever since Atuma. It feels good.
Did you guys pick that up? Like, literally, what an absolute god gamer. He says Nimrod has had an explosion of popularity. It's like, was this whole thing scripted, Cody? That was too perfect.
Top to bottom. I'm just reading off a teleprompter here. And with that, that's going to do it for today, guys. Okay, I had an error there. That's going to do it for today, guys, and thank you for checking out the Snapchat. These are our hot and rising cards that Alex and I put together here on the list. If you guys want to check out Symbiote Spider-Man and Silver Sable, 2 great cards, and our final reviews on them. Snap's most busted combos that you should be playing right now. And then finally, the Snapchat mailbag. Check it out on Alex's side of the Snapchat. You guys have a good one. Have a great one. Till the next one. Happy snapping.